Texans lived in the slums of East London during Jack the Ripper time.
Oh,
if you ever want to trip back with me
stuff,
to East
man.
London, that's my area.
We love
Awesome.
that stuff.
We're at the site today of the Lower Sioux Massacre. We're in Redwood Falls in Minnesota. This is the last building standing here from the Lower Sioux Massacre that took place in 1862. The Lower Sioux were very unhappy about the fact they weren't getting any food. They were starving to death. Their money was late due to the Civil War. So subsequently, starving, hungry, having nowhere to go, they attacked this building where their food was being stored. And this here is the site of the Lower Sioux Agency Massacre. 40 individuals were killed, European villagers. Gentleman, the clerk, was jumping out of the window trying to escape. Down here to my right is the site of the Redwood Ferry. All of the villagers were trying to get to the ferry to take them to Fort Ridgely, 9 miles away, so they could find shelter and they could survive. But we're standing in the very spot right now where that massacre took place, an amazing moment in American history.
Wow. And you think this is haunted?
I think any site that involves a battlefield and a massacre is going to have residual energy due to the things that took place there. Even outside of the massacre, just the fact this was a conurbation, what you don't see here is all the cabins that would have been here back in the day in 1862. It was quite a large settlement back in the day. So even just being on land where a settlement used to take place would be enough to make this a site worthy of an investigation. But when you then throw into that the panic, they were burning buildings, they were killing people. I mean, it was a proper, attack that took place early in the morning here. And that will leave a footprint. Wherever humanity goes, a footprint is left behind of paranormal activity, and this would be a prime site for that.
Be interesting to go inside one day.
I've investigated here many times and I've ran equipment, of course. Over to my right here is the site where John Nairn actually lived in a cabin. He was the site carpenter, and he also helped build Fort Snelling, which is a large fort to keep the British from coming back down from Canada here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. John Nairn and his family escaped from the Sioux Uprising by going down to the river and getting the ferry to escape from the massacre. He had a helper. He had a 16-year-old girl with him called Louisa Bott, and she used to help with the housework. His wife was disabled. She'd help out with the children. Very interestingly, Louisa Bott in later life, when she was in her 80s, became very depressed, and in the 1920s, she actually hanged herself in the poor farm. So it's very interesting how all this sticks together, that we've got spirits and ghosts from different locations all coming together in the same places at the same time.
Very interesting.
Yeah, especially when he's talking.
Can you tell I've been on TV a few times?
Talking to
Yeah, listen to
How
him
bizarre
talk
is that,
like,
though? Literally the other side of those bluffs. You can see the other side of the bluffs through the trees, right?
I saw a couple deer actually.
Right, yeah. So
See the right there? Oh, that's a car. That's a car.
Well, if you look
No,
through
but that one's a
if
car.
you look through the trees, you can see on the other
Yeah,
side
sure.
of the bluff,
Yeah,
right? Well, obviously the river, and it's about a quarter of a mile wide there.
Yeah.
One of the soldiers, 2 or 3 of the soldiers, jumped in the river to try and escape the massacre and drowned, and they were discovered 8 or 9 miles further up the river.
Drifted,
Right?
yeah, sure.
And
Well-
what was the story of the massacre that happened down
All
there?
the people that were in the village getting killed, the ones that weren't getting killed, ran to the ferry. There's a ferry that goes across the river there, and they can find shelter at Fort Ridgely, which was a huge fort built in the 1850s. And so they tried to get away, because in a fort, obviously, with the walls and the artillery and the soldiers there, they could seek refuge. So when they saw the massacre taking place, everyone ran to the ferry to try and get across the river to access Fort Ridgely that was 9 miles away.
And that ferry, Adrian, was a pole like a rope. And I wonder how many people could fit on that.
Yeah, I think you could get about 1 cart and 1 horse, I think, was the plan. And there's a rope goes across the river, and you had a ferryman pulling on the rope and taking that across. The ferryman actually has a monument dedicated to him, because he could have left, he could have ran away, and he stayed here and saved up to 50, 60 families, and he actually ended up dying. The soldiers found him dead on the path trying to make his way to Fort Ridgely. So there is a monument on the other side of the bluffs dedicated to the ferryman who stayed behind at his post to save all those families, but unfortunately lost his life.
You think that area is kind of a magnet of activity?
I have been down there. It is pretty thick. It's just a pain in the arse to get up and down. We would need walking boots, and we'd be out of, I mean, I'm a fairly fit guy. It's all very well going down, but on the way up it's like that as well, and you know, you're wheezing a little bit.
Yeah, no, not for me. Yeah.
So if you pull up where that car is, I can take you into the middle for 2 minutes and I can show you where the massacre took place. Pull up here, yeah. Got a lot of Native American warriors come through here. I actually left them some tobacco offerings, and this is where all the Dakota words were coming through.
Okay.
Now, they wanted to start a military cemetery here, so they buried a couple of people and then decided they probably didn't want to do that. So there's 2 people buried here that were in the military back in the day, Civil War vets, and they started a small cemetery and it never got any further than that. So that's what's left.
Not much. They're special though, right?
Where there's white posts is where all the bodies, the majority of the killing took place. So the scouts that were posted on the edge of this field, the scouts were based where that post is. So when the Native Americans came out of the trees, and they were hiding in the trees, they actually shot the scouts along the line. But they didn't set up very well. Normally when you put scouts and lookouts around, you would set them up a few hundred yards from your camp to give you time to get ready. One of the decisions that was made that was very poor and caused the massacre here is the fact that the scouts were right next to where the camp was. So by the time the Indians attacked,
There's not much room.
there's not enough room and they got pinned down. In the summer, this grass is up to your neck, it's neck high. So you've got to imagine the Native Americans attacking the soldiers, surrounding them in long grass, and they're just being picked off. They were under fire for 2 solid days without any food or any water, and they had the wrong sized ammunition. They had to carve their mini balls down to get them to fit into the rifles they had. So the first scouts were killed here. The Native Americans were hiding in the trees. The chiefs that attacked on that day were Chief Mankato, Chief Big Eagle, Chief Redleg were amongst the main protagonists. And Chief Mankato actually died by being hit by a cannonball 3 weeks later at the Battle of Wood Lake, which is near Granite Falls. Yeah, that's
right?
the sort of thing you've got. We're just going to walk out into the middle here because that's where the main massacre took place. I saw some crazy UFO activity out here once. I was sat here investigating with my team and it was 2 o'clock in the morning and 7 UFOs went over in formation without a single sound, all lights, very quietly, and then one of them took off and went straight upwards into the sky and disappeared. We're walking up here to the centre of the battlefield where the US Army was pinned down solidly for 2 days. Fort Ridgely, which is 9 miles away, heard the gunshots and they wondered what was going on. So they sent reinforcements. The reinforcements saw what was happening, thought that there wasn't enough of them and went back. They didn't help.
Yeah.
The reinforcements saw the massacre and how bad things were and went back to the fort and said, we need more people.
Oh.
They didn't help them out. And there's signposts all around and it tells you about the history. And as I said, the white markers were where the heaviest casualties were. 24 soldiers were killed in a 2-day period and 90 horses were slaughtered, and they just left the horses here, of course. So for years afterwards, this whole area was one mass of carcasses of horses. There was vultures, all kinds of things.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine.
But they didn't think the Native Americans were in the area. They camped here, and there has always been an argument about whose decision it was. There was a gentleman who actually was in charge of the battalion called Captain Anderson, and then there was Major Brown. Well, he was a major because he was one of the agents at the reservation, and they gave them the position of major so that the Native Americans treated them with more respect and they had more weight behind their name. But he wasn't a military man, so there's some discussion about who made the decision to camp here. Was it the captain, who was the captain of the battalion, or was it the major who didn't have any military experience and was just a major almost in name, and there's been an argument over the years about whose decision it was to camp in such a terrible location which led them to be massacred. This is where the camp was. They camped overnight. They were a battalion sent out by Forge Ridgely to bury bodies, ultimately, that were left in the prairie after the initial massacres 3 or 4 weeks after the Sioux Uprising. And they were a battalion just being given the instruction to bury pioneers that were just left in the open after being killed. And so they were made up of office clerks, drummer boys, older soldiers. They weren't a crack fighting team. And they got taken by surprise. The Native Americans stumbled across them by accident and thought, wow, what a terrible position to be camping in, and just thought it was a good opportunity to make hay while the sun shines. And it was the biggest loss of life during the US Dakota War of 1862 by the US Army, unfortunately. This was an event that changed the war, because there was such an outcry and it was such a problem for the US Army that they were caught like this and they were massacred, that they decided to bring in reinforcements, and they managed to get some really crack, hardened troops that were a Minnesota brigade that had fought in the Civil War, and they'd seen combat and they knew what they were doing, and they brought them up out of the Civil War at the time. And in 3 or 4 weeks' time after this, there was a big battle at Wood Lake, which is out towards Granite Falls, and unfortunately they routed the entire Sioux Nation there, and that was the end of the war. So this massacre, in many respects, kind of signalled the end of the war for the Dakota Sioux, because reinforcements then came. They then put crack troops in charge of the attacks, and things went downhill for the Dakota Sioux from that point onwards. So even though this was a massacre, it kind of hurried the war up.
It was the beginning of the end.
Yeah. And you are going to be very close to Wood Lake battlefield when you're in the Volstead house.
Okay.
You're going to drive past it. It'll be a mile away. I mean, you can go and look around it if you want. The Dakota have got a pasting. Chief Mankato was hit by a cannonball and died. They don't know to this day why he didn't step out the way. It was bouncing along the ground towards him, and he just stood his ground. He didn't jump out of the way. Whether he didn't have an understanding of what was happening, or whether he thought himself to be spiritually hardened enough that he could withstand that, I have no idea. But apparently he just stood there, and they saw the ball bouncing across the land, and it killed him when it hit him. Little Crow managed to escape, and everyone fled north to Montevideo, and that's where Camp Release is, where they released all the prisoners en masse, and they arrested all of the Dakota, and that at that point is where 300 Dakota warriors were sentenced to death, if you recall, and they then were pardoned, many of them. And then on Christmas Day, the day after Christmas, 38 of them, I believe, were hanged in Mankato for those crimes. It's the biggest mass execution in American history. You've got the Lower Sioux Agency massacre was the end of August. This is getting towards the 5th, 6th, 7th of September, something like that. When you go to Wood Lake, you're looking at the beginning of October.
So
Camp Release November.
Relatively very fast.
Oh yeah,
This
the
is
whole
like
thing.
boom.
Yeah, 4 or 5 months, 4 months the whole works.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So this is Birch Coulee, very active, horses, lots of soldiers coming through, lots of horse EVPs, lots of noises like that. You're not going to be disturbed here either.
So this is a haunted school?
Yep, it's the Morton High School. It was abandoned or closed in the mid-80s, and it's one of the most haunted buildings I've investigated in Minnesota. I actually had a name come through in one of the classrooms. A name came through. A woman said her name was Esther Foss, and she said she used to teach there and be a teacher. And I went to the Historical Society the following day, looked for their obituaries, and I found Esther Foss, and she was a teacher there in the late 70s, early 80s. I actually found the woman. I've got photographs of her.
Wow.
And she told me her name, and that was the classroom she taught in. And when I gave a talk to the museum, there were 300 people there, and I showed them the information, played them the EVPs, and they actually were taught by her. They knew the woman.
Oh my God.
They said yes, that she was our teacher.
Wow.
and you can park on this
Can
this
I just
gravel.
go right
Yeah,
in?
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. Let's do that.
Now, no one knows this exists,
Look at you. Yeah. Gates open.
so I'll
Interesting that sign. That I mean, is that it?
no, we're going to walk up the.
No, but I
through
mean,
the- Yeah.
that this is it.
This is it.
What
That's
you'd
it.
see from here.
Yeah,
That's it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's all there is. People have lived in this area all their life and don't know this
Right.
exists.
Yeah.
This is a joy. You'll enjoy this. This is just, bearing in mind no one knows this exists. We're in Vicksburg at the moment, and this is the cemetery. There used to be a town here back at the turn of the last century, and that's now a ghost town. So there's nothing left of Vicksburg as a town, but the cemetery now exists. So we're on a little wooded path making our way to Vicksburg Cemetery. It's a ghost town cemetery, and not many people know about it. I've run a ghost box out here, but I've never done a full investigation. What's really surreal is there's a vet here that's buried, and he was a soldier, and I looked him up on my cell phone, and the gentleman's English, and not only is he English, he was actually born in the same town I'm from. See, here I am in the middle of a ghost town cemetery in Minnesota in the Midwest Plains, and I come across a soldier, and when I look him up, he was born in the same town as me back in Britain.
Wow.
You couldn't make that up, could
No.
you?
What are the odds?
It's phenomenal. But you know as well as I do, there's no such thing as a coincidence. All these things happen for a reason. Imagine if you did a drone and you caught everything that's going on.
Oh,
We've got the
yeah.
sun going down on the right, there's a full moon on the left, there's the bluffs and the Minnesota River.
You got the river right here.
That's right. How do you get to go into a ghost town cemetery in the middle of nowhere, right?
Not as often as I'd like.
The thing about this cemetery is the fact that a lot of the gravestones are now missing. Over time they've been destroyed. The Minnesota winters are very harsh, so with the frost, the heat, everything that happens in Minnesota, they've been destroyed. So we've got a very limited number of gravestones to look at. But if you notice, there's depressions in the ground. So if you can see all the depressions, you can see where the graves actually are. Because if a coffin is 2.5, 3 feet deep, over time with all the earth on top, it rots and the coffin collapses. So you now get depressed areas on the ground, which are actually going to show us where the bodies actually are, even though you can see that the gravestones have long since disappeared.
So would the body still be here then?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Just a lot of earth
Wow.
on top of them. This is an altar that's been moved around over a period of time. This is actually a pagan altar. Originally, when I first came here, I don't know how familiar you are with the pagan traditions and Wiccan, but they originally had a north, south, east, west set of rocks here, and they had wind represented by a windmill. There was a shell that represented the sea, and this is an area, you can see there's a chair there. People have been out here during the summer solstice, during the winter solstice. There'd be pagan ceremonies taking place, and I just noticed what they're doing. I can see, based on my knowledge of theology, what's taking place here. So again, imagine the scene as the sun goes down on the summer solstice here in a cemetery that's a ghost town cemetery where pagan witchcraft offerings and rituals are taking place to worship the moon goddess and to worship the earth.
Wow. That's so interesting. I don't think I've ever seen this specifically.
Over here, over my shoulder, there is a grave that has a pen around it. Originally, of course, they'd have put cages around graves to stop grave diggers from taking the bodies. But progressively, people wanted to be shown as middle class rather than working class. So the more ornate the grave and the more ironwork you've got around it, that delineates you in death from working class people if you can afford to have that done and you're middle class. The irony, of course, is that when we're dead, it doesn't matter whether we're middle class or working class, we're all bones and dirt. 2 children died here. This is a family of children that all died at the same time, and I suspect those kind of deaths took place due to things like diphtheria, where the entire family would be wiped out, you know, in a single week, for example. And there's several children buried in this site, and as you can see, people have still left offerings. Even though that was the late 19th century, people have left some little toys for them and put some flowers together for those children that died in this and were buried in this cemetery.
Wow.
I suspect as well that there's graves
I was
outside the
wondering,
fence.
yeah, where it ends.
I think this was put up retrospectively, and I suspect there's graves that probably go out
Yeah.
further, is what I suspect. Oh, it's eerily quiet, isn't it? If you just took a minute, it's really, you know, can you feel that?
I actually felt something over there when you were going over the pagan. I don't know what, but
You have to know as well.
nothing
that any
sinister.
pagan ceremony is going to raise energy, right? Any sense of collective worship. If we was in a church, you'd feel that reverential energy that you have. I've been wondering in places like that they don't have any deer camps.
You wonder if someone snapped this off,
I
just kicked it, or
think a lot of this is down to the fact that if there's a fault in the marble, the water gets in, and then when it freezes, it expands and the whole thing cracks. I don't think there'd be vandals out here. I think it looks like it, but I suspect it's got more to do with the seasons. Do you see these little fault lines?
right?
It only takes one of those to fill with a bit of water,
Yeah.
and then the whole thing's gone, right?
So Adrian, I got a question for you.
Yes.
Why did you start doing this?
I'm originally a historian, so my PhD, my background's in history. I realised many years ago living in London that a paranormal team in London asked me to investigate the buildings from a historical perspective. So they would say to me, can you tell me who used to own the building? Can you tell me the people that used to live there? The things that a historian would be good at. I progressively realised by doing paranormal investigations with them, and you've got to remember this was a long time ago now, in the 80s and 90s, that you could actually have a conversation with a person that died 100 years ago. So imagine as a historian, you have the ability to talk to someone that died 100 years ago, because I write history books, and as a historian, you have to look at secondary source materials. I'm looking at banking details, I'm looking at birth certificates, I'm looking at obituaries. Everything is secondary because we weren't there. We don't have a time machine. So this is my best guess based on all the information I can gather as to what happened back in the day. Now imagine if you could talk to someone who was actually there and ask them questions. That's primary source material. That's like asking your granddad, what did you do during the war? So I got into paranormal investigating so I could talk directly to the ghosts and spirits from history back in the day and actually ask them what it was like through the equipment, which is what you cannot do if you're a historian under any other means. So all of my history books are written through interviewing the dead and getting history back that's been lost to the knowledge of man through the lips of the dead.
Jesus, that was a really good answer.
You asked for it. If you're interested where my psychic ability comes from, being British, I have a long ancestry of gypsy heritage, Romany gypsies. If you notice, I've got quite dark skin for an Englishman, my eyes are black. My family tree, my ancestry goes back generations into gypsy and Romany. My 7th, 6th great grandparents, Johnny Lee for example, was the king of the gypsies back in the mid 18th century. So I suspect some of that sense of being psychic, some of those ideas of being sensitive and being around the land goes through my ancestry on my father's side as being a Romany gypsy. You can almost imagine them outside of a caravan, you know, with a crystal ball and fortune telling. So I suspect running through my DNA is an element of that paranormal, that sense of being psychic.
In the blood.
It's in the blood. Having said that, anyone can be trained, of course.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can see the gypsy in you. Now that you say that.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Black, and
I
I
mean,
have olive skin. I'm not like a Brit, am I? I'm not normal.
Hollywood thing either. I can feel the gypsy, you know, if that makes sense. I mean,
talking to you in a foreign country. I've been to 32 countries. I've lived in 6 countries. You know, I've never stayed in anywhere more than a few years. There is that running through my veins, that sense of travel. You know, I had a VW camper van in my youth, and I'm not going to tell you everything I got up to in that van. Well, I went to North Africa, I've been to India, you know, I travelled all over Europe and have that sense of travel in my veins.
you're out the late.
How often do you see these kind of romanticised ruins anywhere?
You know what? This is quartz. I always wish we could just snap our fingers and be back in time. And just, we're just right there.
So what were your experiences here?
There was a lot of residual music playing. So we heard piano coming through on our EVPs, people playing the piano. And when I did my historical research, the Minnesota Historical Society did do an archaeological dig on this site, and they did find the remains of a piano. So it used to be a halfway house. People would stay here. There was lots and lots of bedrooms. It was 3 stories high. It looked quite remarkable. The locals call it the Brown Castle because it belonged to Major Brown, and it looks like a castle. When you compare this to the sod houses and the log cabins, I mean, we're leagues ahead. This is a really important building for someone who had a lot of money. I think it was a status symbol more than anything, but on the other side of the bluffs of the river here was Dakota land. So on the south side here, there were teepees, wigwams, there were settlements. I think it was written that there was 6 settlements on the other side, and Native Americans did come through here and they did share hospitality with them. As I mentioned to you before, the wife, Susan Frenier, was the wife, and she was actually half Scottish, half Native American. So she had a background, you know, where her ancestry was the Dakota Sioux, and they had 12 children. And one of them was called Samuel, and I did access Samuel in this location. He did come through and talk to me. He told me his name, and we did discover him through historical research. So that was a very interesting part of this investigation for me. It's fun to go round the corner and actually go up to the top and look out.
These woods are kind of...
I don't know if we can make it out in the darkness, but there's actually a water pump there, and there is a path that leads into the woods, and I have actually been back there. And there were some deer that had been slaughtered. There's a lot of coyotes in these parts. We might hear them howling a bit later on in the investigation. But there's some carcasses laid back there. There's a lot of stones on the left where they piled up the stones that were loose or were just on the ground after this building got destroyed.
And you were saying there are a lot of witches in this area?
Yeah, we're in Sacred Heart, and there is a population of people that follow the pagan tradition and the religion, and they have workshops here, and people come from all over the Midwest, mostly ladies of course, and they do workshops to empower women and to do pagan rituals, and that is in Sacred Heart, which we're in at the moment.
Wow.
But what an amazing building, to have a veranda looking out over that. And what you don't see is the river. What we're seeing is the other side of the river on that side.
Wow.
I've been here in the spring when the river's burst its banks and it's flooding because all the snow is thawing. And a lot of these trees here are half covered in water. So the river here does swell to a large size.
Okay.
And it's almost like a floodplain there.
Right.
And you think this building's pretty actively haunted?
I do, yeah. With the relatives of the individuals that lived here, of course, any building where you lived, you know, is going to get residual energy and intelligent hauntings as well if people still want to hang out in the building they were born and grew up in. And of course a lot of people had fun here. They had a piano, they had a billiards table. It was a place for hospitality. They had a gramophone. There's an inventory of everything they found here when they did the archaeological dig, and they found really expensive pots and pans from New York. Major Brown, who built this house, was such a political figure in Minnesota, and he founded a lot of the laws and mandates of Minnesota back in the day, and he was a businessman. He tried to bring steam power into Minnesota. He actually invented 3 or 4 steam-powered vehicles that he was introducing to Minnesota to help with ploughing and with farming. And so he was in New York to secure more funding when the uprising actually started, and he had to race back from New York to discover, of course, that his family had been kidnapped by Little Crow during the Sioux uprising.
Beautiful
You almost
spot.
want to camp out, don't you?
Yeah. And that sunset.
I'm glad we made the decision to come out here. I know it's added another 20 minutes there and back, but it, you know, worthwhile, right?
For sure. No, yeah.
Okay, everybody, so we got the tour from Adrian earlier this week. It's now Wednesday. We've investigated the Christie House, the Volstead House. We've done a live stream from the museum. We've investigated the jail and the schoolhouse. And Jeff and I are here back at the beginning of this trail of destruction and death that kind of began the uprising and the war that occurred here in Minnesota in the Midwest.
Dakota War.
The Dakota War. We're gonna walk over to the building here at this historic site. I wish we would have had time to go see the Ferryman Monument, but we just didn't. I fly out tomorrow. This is our final day and night of shooting, but we're gonna do a spirit box and a K2 here before we head to the Birch Coulee battlefield, where we're gonna do a investigation, even though it is frigidly cold out. Oh. Even though it is frigidly cold out. It's right over there. We're gonna walk over right now. Let's do it. I'll take the camera. What am I looking at? What was that?
Oh, it's pretty chilly.
So, K2 meter, we're running right here. Still on green.
Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa! Holy shit, dude!
Oh, there's gotta be some.
Look at that. That's crazy.
There's gotta
Let's
be.
move it. Well, there's nothing here though. No. There can't be. There's nothing that's here. This is an empty building. What? That is weird.
Look at
What?
there's a phantom signal that's right here.
What? It stops there. Here, I gotta get this. Yeah, it's on there.
Look at that. That is a massive amount of EMF right here.
You gotta be kidding me.
No. Because look, it's not coming from the ground. What would be?
Okay. Is this like energy from like the building or what?
Look at that.
I mean, this is literally. Look at the stops. Got some there.
That's.
I don't get it.
Well,
Let's do a spirit box. No, it's just nothing.
what? No. Yo, what?
Moving too fast, buddy.
What the f?
You're moving
It's
too
gone.
fast. You're moving
Look at that. It's completely
I know.
gone.
What, dude? There's something.
Yo.
Okay, let's.
What?
That's nuts, man.
What? I thought we were about to just debunk that.
I mean, this is an actual.
That's
I'm gonna come back here.
insanity.
This is an actual.
This is a
Look at-
historic building.
Look at underneath. It's freaking just a.
What?
There's
the
nothing
hell
here.
was that?
There is nothing.
Look,
under
here
the
it goes
deck.
again. Here it goes again. Look it. Right here now.
Okay.
It's like it's following us.
Holy crap! What in the hell?
What would
Okay.
possibly be
There's
doing
nothing
that?
out here. There's like
No.
no power, nothing.
No. It's like pulsating. Look at how that. That's crazy. Okay.
Wow, I don't know.
Yeah. Very strange. But we're gonna do a spirit box here real quickly.
Hands are.
My hands
cold,
are really
man.
cold.
I'm like,
It's
put
like
one in your
18
hand.
degrees right now. Hey everybody, my name's Colin. I'm here with my dad, Jeff. We just want to know if you died here during the massacre and the battle. If you're still here with us, could you say hi or hello if you are? Let's walk over here. Were you slaughtered in this area? Okay, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. We came out here without gloves. It is literally, I can't feel that hand that I was just using.
Yeah.
Let's just look at this one more
Okay.
time.
Okay. Stop. Okay. I swear. Let me be on it.
Wow.
It's like it's dead. Okay.
So
That's
either
real
way,
estate.
we didn't really get any spirit boxes, but that just phantom energy was nuts.
But this is empty.
Yeah, this is just-
there's
this is
nothing
wood.
under it.
And
This is just a
stone building.
This is an empty structure that's just historically here.
This place doesn't even have power or anything either. It's just like a storage facility.
Yeah.
But look at nothing.
God, isn't that weird?
That was a very
Dude.
strong signal.
That's really strange. That was a big time signal.
Either way, guys.
Okay, that was very cool.
Thank you for coming through if that was you. It's a little cold out, but we're headed to Birch Coulee battlefield right now. If you know where that is, maybe some of your friends or family died there. So if you want to come meet us and talk, we're going to be over there. Come meet us. Let's go, man. I'm freezing. Okay guys, so let's go on into the battlefield. Keep in mind I'm wearing like 8 layers and I've got shit in my pockets, so not exactly the most fashionable night for the channel.
They're
Kind of
warm.
tough. Yeah, they feel good, but
These are like you'd have when you were like 4. When you were 4, we'd have these things where you bring your little fingies out. Oh man,
Fingies.
these are like warm. These little.
Oh.
Yeah, there's something. Some animal.
Keep the fingies warm. Oh, what the hell? There's a car coming?
Where do you want to post that one?
You see what I said? There's a car
yeah.
coming.
I see that.
Who the would that be?
I don't know. Why would they come out here at night? What's up with that?
Why are they stopping right there?
It's just all, I mean, this is the middle of nowhere. Kind of sketchy. What the, well, they're going like 3 miles an hour. Like,
Yeah, they're fine.
I think they're gone.
weird though.
I also just want to remind people online, let's walk over here. Oh, I can't really see. Adrian showed this to us the other day. There are actually 2 people buried here, but they're actually unrelated to the massacre. They were going to start a World War I or World War II veteran cemetery here. World War I, and they just never finished it, but there's 2 people buried here, which is just very interesting that they chose a massacre ground to start a cemetery.
What is that?
You know? It's a cool shot. So, yeah, it's, can't really see it. It's really, really, really cold out, but we're gonna head to the circle where most of the casualties occurred. There are little white posts everywhere denoting where the biggest, largest groups, I can't see where the hell, okay. The biggest groups of casualties happened, and that's where we're gonna go, to the circle where all of the people from Minnesota and the U.S. Army were posted up when they basically got slaughtered.
If this hadn't been up here, I would have had my Palomino out here.
Yeah. One day, bring a horse as a trigger object. I also want to add in to tell people that just doing some research on the people who died here and where they're buried. There's a big grave in St. Paul, Minnesota, where most of the people are buried, but I noticed on some of the documents that some of the people were listed as possibly still buried on the battlefield. So I guess that just means that some of the bodies just went missing, and they could be buried anywhere in this area, and probably are. This was from the State Historical Society. So, we're going to the circle, buddy. It's right over there. It looks ominous, doesn't it?
How far out actually is the circle?
It's right there.
Okay, should we go?
There hasn't been clouds the whole time that we've been here.
Yeah, that
Not
may-
one cloud. This is us right now. Wrong place, wrong time.
Oh,
Should have been here
damn.
in the summer.
That's not a good omen. Yeah, so they, again, remember, for people watching Little Crow, and their, what would it be, tribe?
Yeah.
They spoke English, fluent English. So they do understand us talking.
Beautiful place to encamp.
An error in judgment.
My birth. Okay, so follow me. I'm gonna put the REM pod in the middle.
Okay.
So we're gonna put the REM pod in the middle of this circle where most of the casualties occurred.
Okay.
Here's the K2 meter. To any soldiers who died here at Birch Coulee,
Oh, what the hell? Already? Wow. That's pretty saint out in the middle of freaking nowhere.
If you died out here, we're here to tell your story and to hear your voice. We don't want you to be afraid of us. We just want you to come talk with us tonight if your energy is still here. And we're sorry for what happened. Is there anybody here on the battlefield
Really dark.
with us? Can you do that again if you're with us? K2 just hit to like the middle one, the yellow.
Really? Oh, no.
Keep coming towards us.
Can you all come over by here, this device right here and make it go off? Thank you. Keep coming.
It's kind of crazy to just think about this area. You know, bodies just covering the ground.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird
Right.
to
It
think
is.
about?
It's kind of interesting that
Mhm.
hit though, you know, really. If anybody's out here, please come and touch these devices like you were doing. We're friendly.
If you're out here with us and you can hear my voice, can you just say yes or hello? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you tell us your name?
Wow, yeah.
Sounds like there were a lot of different names and words there.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how many people are here with us right now? A number? Seven.
Yeah, they
Seven.
said. I think they said 7 before.
Yeah, I thought I
Gee,
heard
I was
that
gonna
too.
say.
Isn't that the year that guy died
What?
on the grave?
What do you mean?
I think that's the year the guy that has the grave here died.
What?
74.
Really?
Yeah.
Anybody that might be here with us, indigenous or white, anyone, can you say your name, please? I thought I heard Peter. Me too. Okay, if it's Peter, can you tell us again, make it clearer? Thought I saw it. Okay, whoever this is, if it's Peter or otherwise, how old are you? Give us a number, please.
30.
It sounds like there may be more than one of you guys here. Can you give us a name? A clear name? Please say that again.
Could you say yes or no? Are you buried here somewhere on the battlefield still? Could you say it clear, yes or no? Are you buried here?
Seems like there's a lot of names coming through, like different spirits. To me, it seems more active.
Getting pretty cold.
Yeah.
How about
Okay.
you?
Yeah.
This is not
We-
meant to be a
we-
full-on investigation, guys.
No.
Either it's
No.
really cold
Yeah.
out, so
But we did have the REM pod, and we did have the K2 hit. I think we got some, some pretty good clear readings from the spirit box.
Hit again either.
Yeah. It's very still out here.
It is a very still. Just. I feel like if we were here in the summer, we'd definitely
Yeah.
be able to be here
Yeah.
longer and later.
Summer.
But
I
it's
was just wondering if
way
you could
too
hear,
cold.
any like maybe on tape, maybe some drums or anything,
Yeah, let's go ask that over here.
Okay.
We're gonna just sit for a second in complete silence and listen. You can use your voice. You can play on a drum.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Again, huh?
I My blood sugar just random. I literally drank an entire Gatorade before we came out here.
Well,
let's just ask. This is your last chance. Could you let us hear your voice?
or go through like a bird or a coyote or anything. Something over there.
We need to go over there. That's a fucking car door.
Let's go. Oh shit, I hope not.
It's right here.
That was a weird.
If we get back there and there's no one there, that's gonna be weird. It looks so dark, man.
It is dark. Oh, I see our car. Right? Isn't that our car? This air is so cold in my lungs. Huh?
This thing just spiked.
Yeah.
Also, what the hell was that noise then?
Yeah.
That was right when we asked for it. Could that have been another, like a... There's nobody here. There's only one road in and out of this place.
Yeah.
This is it.
I'm actually really getting kind of froze up here, buddy.
Me too, man.
I think it's kind of worth it at this point. You want to do a out? Oh shit.
Either way, ending it with a little bit of mystery with that noise. Wish we could stay here longer, but it's too cold and my blood sugar is dangerously low.
Yeah.
So
It's
Here.
cold. Look at this.
here, I'll just
Okay.
put this in my pocket. So everybody, hope you enjoyed this episode with all the history of the area to start our series here in Redwood Falls. We're actually about to go shoot the last episode in the series. You can see our faces are red because it's so cold. But we're about to go film the last investigation, which is the scariest. And I love you guys. So does he.
Yep. Absolutely.
Very odd stillness to this property. Very odd stillness, but almost like something's here still wanting to say something.
It's really dark.
I'm sure it would if we had more time. But from Minnesota, it's Colin here.
Jeff.
And as always, everybody, we love you.
Yep.
Stay spooky. Woohoo! Oh.
I hope there's no one waiting in the car for us.
Yeah, that's what
You know
I'm.
what I'm saying?
Someone got into the car.
Murder scene.
They're gonna
right
slit
now.
our throats when we get in.
To illuminate that baby. It's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Can you leave the back?
No.
Oh, what?
What the?
Okay. That must
Yo.
have been the noise that we heard. We didn't leave the back open.
No.
100%.
And no one obviously stole anything because they would have taken this
Here.
pad that's literally right here, or this camera bag, these expensive batteries.
Okay.
Whoa.
That's what we heard.
That's pretty crazy.
Yes.
What the? How often does a trunk just open?
Let me see if it reopens. Yeah, that was closed. Honestly.
Whoa.
100%.
What the hell?
Well,
Okay, well that's pretty weird.
just that this was laying on my seat. I mean, remember when I asked for that last night?
Yeah, you did.
For the UV light? It's a UV light. And when I got in, it was just laying right here like that.
What?
So I don't know
That's-
where would that even come from?
I don't know. That's really strange that
Pretty odd.
you left we heard the sound of the trunk opening on camera.
Yeah, I
and then
know.
it
It will be on camera.
how, why?
And we have nobody else, obviously, with us.
No.
Like that either. And like you said, if that car that passed, if they wanted to come back and monkey
No,
around,
no car was passing.
I mean, if they wanted to, they would take stuff.
Yeah.
You know. Wow. And we've had stuff stolen,
Yeah.
out of our car with cameras and shit like that. So that's pretty weird.
Strange.
I kind of feel like it's a good time to get out of here.
Me too. The
Yeah.
energy kind of changed a little
It's
bit.
a little different.
The Battle of Birch Coulee. Remains a mystery.
Okay.